Hey everybody, this is Modern Refugee. I listen to a lot of bigger prepping channels when I'm out doing my work, when I'm driving around and doing different things. And this morning I was listening to Appalachia's Homestead with Patara, and she's one of the bigger channels that I listen to when I'm driving around and I'm doing my work. And she had a video on this morning that was called Surviving the Greatest Depression. And I was sort of impressed by this video, so I wanted to do a VR to it, kind of sharing my experiences. I was fortunate enough to have older parents and have older grandparents that I grew up with. And a lot of the things that she mentioned in that video sort of coincided with some of the things that I was told as stories when I was growing up. I like watching her channel from time to time. She has a personality of several people. The personality she has is similar to several people that I grew up with and I can remember. But she talked a lot about, how surviving a Great Depression today would look. And I always go back to history into what I was taught. And over a year ago, I did a couple of videos that were on the Great Depression and the war years, and they were from the things that I was told by a lot of it by my grandmother. And my grandmother was in her 30s during the Depression, so she had a lot of firsthand experience, and I had those firsthand accounts of what the Depression was like. And I'll put a link in the description for those videos if you guys like to revisit them, or if you've never seen those videos before. But there was some constants that I learned growing up about the Depression, and she kind of mentioned those things in her own way, but she sort of mentioned those things sort of in the modern, what they would look like in the modern time here. Now, the big thing that Grandma told me is there was no money. There was no money. That was the biggest thing that I got reiterated over and over again, is there was no money. And the other thing is you made do and you did without. You fix things. One of the things she talked about in that video was, mending, learning how to sew and stuff, because, you just didn't go out and buy a new shirt. You mended the one that you had. And, that goes back to, some of the things that I said in my videos. But there was no money. And the thing that I can see happening now that coincides with that, people, what little money they did have, they kept to do things like pay the taxes and whatever. But the big thing that you hear talking about, it's been talked about for years and years already, is, they want to eliminate cash. And that's a good place to look, is back to what the Depression was, because nobody had any cash. Now it's for a different reason. They want to go to some type of digital means of exchange, but they want to eliminate cash. They've wanted to do that for a long time. But think of how many millions of transactions an hour take place with cash. Now, if something happens to that cash, where they get rid of that, whatever, and how many small transactions between people, between businesses and stuff are no longer going to exist. You're going to go back to basically what it was during the Depression. There's going to be no small means of exchange between people, between, businesses and whatever. You're going to see other means of getting things done, other means of exchange pop up. And one of the big ones was basically just work. People worked for stuff they needed back during the Depression, and I can see that happening again. Whether it's food, whether it's parts, whether it's other services, people worked for that stuff. And, when you get into the skills aspect of preparedness, that's sort of what it's going to be like, I think. You're going to see a lot of people, if there is no means of exchange like cash, for whatever reason, whether it's some type of economic thing where nobody has the money, or there's some type of transition into another economic system, you're going to see that people are going to have to work and do things to secure what they need, get what they need. Now, there was another thing with the Depression that sort of popped back into my mind, things that I was told when I was watching this video of hers, was the Depression pretty much sucked for everybody. Even if you had money and stuff, it insulated you to a certain extent against certain things, but it pretty much just sucked across the board. Now, there were some people that had, that had their farms paid for, that had a little bit more money, that had a little bit more skills, or they knew how to do something like a doctor that, that people needed that helped them out a little bit. So their skills, what they knew, stuff that they had, I guess you could say prepped for back then, that actually aided them, so it didn't suck as bad, but it still sucked. And the people that didn't have any of that stuff were really on the bottom, looking up, trying to get through those hard times. But as a general rule, from what I was told by my grandparents and stuff, is it just pretty much sucked for everybody. It just sucked for more people than it did, for less that had certain things. The other thing was people that had their stuff paid for fared better. They didn't have quite the pressure on them, and they didn't lose as much stuff. You always hear about, people losing land and farms and stuff during the Depression, and a lot of people around here already had that stuff paid for at that point in time, so then that gave them a certain amount of security. But there were lots of times where I heard stories where people, they knocked on the farm door, say, hey, can we work for a day for some food, basically. And these types of things, I think you're going to see come back. Now, it is a different society now than what it was then. She also mentioned that in that video. But people are still people, and not everybody is going to be a complete and total, I guess, Mad Max Marauder type either. Can things like that happen? Yeah. Did things like that happen back then? Yeah, that they did. And there was a lot of that, especially in the cities, especially during Prohibition. People wanted to make money, so they did things that weren't very nice. But out here in the country, especially, a lot of people leaned on other people. They leaned on their neighbors. They leaned on their community. The whole prepper community thing that you hear about all the time. You're going to see more of that come back. I think that if something does happen that curtails the cash, that there is some type of another Great Depression, whether it's because of some economic failure or some type of system change, a lot of the things that were relevant back then are going to become relevant again. The means is going to be the same. How they're going to get through it is going to be a lot of the things that happened back then, a lot of the things that got people through the Depression. You're going to see that percolate back up to the surface, and you're going to see those things happen again. The reasons might have changed, but people will always resonate back to those things that happened in the past. History repeats itself, right? So the circumstances might be different, but the situations might be pretty similar when you look at it. But anyway, thought that was a particularly good video, and it had a lot to do with some of the stories that I was told and those videos that I did about the Depression and the war years. I'll put links in the description for her video, plus my two videos there that I think are completely relevant to this topic. So you guys can check those out. But anyway, this is Modern Refugee. Appreciate all my subscribers out there. Hope you guys got a little information, a little entertainment out of this video as always. Always something to think about. You guys have a good one.